Thanks, Perry. Up next, we have our regional reports. It's going to start by having a video by a curator who could not be here, Chus Martinez, who's chief curator at MACBA in Barcelona, and is guest curator at the 29th Sao Paulo Biennial this year. She's going to play a video of herself presenting. I kind of think that's cool. I thought the platform one went really nice, too. I like the cell phone ringing thing. Claire Doherty is the founder and director of Situations, a commissioning and research program based at the University of West England in Bristol, and is currently a visiting lecturer in curating at the Royal College of Art in London. And BC Silva is the founder and director of the Center for Contemporary Art in Lagos, Nigeria, a nonprofit art space focusing on the art and culture of Nigeria and West Africa. Please join me in welcoming the video of Chus Martinez.
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chus Martinez, and because of that I actually cannot be there this afternoon with you in New York, since it's a really weird name and it has been written like that, and my real name is Chus Martinez, which is already somehow a regional report. I'm in the studio of my very good friends in Bilbao, and it's actually paradoxical because 2 jobs ago, I was the artistic director of Sala Recalde in Bilbao, and it has been one of the best experiences that I actually did have in working with the question of what is the local and how can we address it, and what are we talking about when we use a language like that. So here we go. Okay. I was a little bit surprised when I was invited to address the regional report. What does it mean? What could that be? So I've been thinking a lot about how to address this question at all, and I decided that there is at least 2 questions that I would like to share with you this afternoon. One is already the question of language and how we use language. At least in the last 2 decades, we have been trying to describe from where we are. So I am here, I'm in a region, I am the Basque Country today, and you are there in Manhattan, New York. So I am inside and you are outside, so to say. I'm in the locality and you are in the international scene. So the question of language is one of the most important questions, I think, when we are trying to understand these questions. Language. In the last 2 decades, we have been trying to describe where we are. What are we doing, those which are not working in centers or in spaces that are not recognized as centers, like Bilbao or even Frankfurt or Barcelona somehow, even if Barcelona has been relocated as a center through to events like the Olympics in '92. But the question of description, how to describe that, how to create a picture, how to make the picture understandable for those that they are in other localities, has become very, very important. So how to transmit information that then could be potential knowledge. So in doing so, we have been also trapped in a series of metaphors and metaphoric language. We have been trapped in metaphors that should should describe what the region is, where we are located, what we are doing, and transmit it from that. So we all have been trapped in all these panel discussions where people have been on and on about the local and the global, the this and the that, And not very long ago, I've been reading a book that has been first published in 2005 by Bruno Latour, which is called Reassembling the Social. And I'm not going to recommend this book because it's kind of unreadable. But in page 178, Bruno Latour said something which really struck me, which is, it's stupid to think that there is places which are bigger than others, there are places that are smaller than others, that there is certain spaces, geographical spaces, that they are wider or narrower than others. That when you are working in a local or a specific context, you are then situated below, and that when you are actually in an international context, whatever does it mean, then you are in a wider, in a place which is situated above. You are above something else. So he said, definitely, you cannot keep on trying to describe what we are doing in those terms. We need another vocabulary. We are trapped in this kind of metaphorical language. So what can we do? And then he proposes a very interesting explanation for the problem, which is, what if we think that what is really the problem is that in places which are not centers, we cannot deny that some cities, some regions are in a different position than others. They are situated geographically, but also geopolitically, geoeconomically, in a different position than others. They have more access than others. So how can we talk about that? And he proposes a very interesting suggestion, which is to think that in some places connectivity is just safer. That means if we all decide to have a magazine done and then we meet in London in order to discuss that idea, tomorrow we can, all of us, meet again in London or in Paris. But if you have a similar decision to do a project, to start something, and you are doing or provoking a meeting in Kabul, the possibilities of not meeting again are higher than the ones of meeting again. So this question of places which already have a safer connectivity, that means where things can circulate faster and in a better manner, already are creating what we call centers or regions which have a different position than other regions. And that made me think a lot about the use of language anyhow, because of course I can try to talk here about how is the situation in Spain, what are we doing now, or how was the situation in a specific regions inside a country like Spain. But in order to avoid talking about geopolitics, or in order to avoid, talking vernacular versus standard, we need to rethink about the very use of language, and also what we, art critics, curators, and artists are doing when we try to describe a situation. When we normally try to describe a situation, we're not only describing it, and most normally what you end up doing is actually prescribing it. That means that you are already creating a narrative where you put your wishes and you put your different values into the description, so that it becomes not a description or how reality is, but how reality should be. How do you think that reality should be? And normally it's always pointing towards, this new fluency into internationalism, or into the fact that we should get more connected. But the thing of how do we connect is a very important one. Should we connect these belows and aboves, or should the belows get connected and the aboves get connected, or should we actually try to find a language where we could talk about artistic practice and its specific languages in specific conditions? So another question related to the question of language is the question of time. When you are walking in a certain region of the world, when we are talking in geopolitical terms, one of our anxieties also addresses the fact that we all want to be in the present. So the question of what the present is and how things get synchronized today is a very important one. We are all more and more synchronized with devices, with internet advertisement that kind of inform us of what other people very far away are doing. We have enough means of connectivity to actually make some kind of information travel. Also, we have become, thanks to that, kind of fluent into this international language, or in a language that we all talk, this kind of universal languages that addresses similar problems, but in very, very different places and contexts, political and economical. So okay, we all want to be in the present, and that's really an interesting question. In a book that Agamben published not very long ago, also in 2008, where he questions what is the contemporary, he goes on and on about a very interesting book of Nietzsche, the German philosopher, which is called Unzeitgemäßige Betrachtungen. That means untimely considerations or meditations. Untimely, the question of things which are out of time. How can you be in and outside of time? Are we actually sharing the same time, or is this also a fiction? And another of the things that I am considering, which is very important, is anachronism. How to situate yourself outside time. How not to be in the present. How to accept that actually from certain regions and from certain artistic and social practices, very important not to respond to the anxiety that the political pressure, like nationalism in Spain in certain regions, but all over Europe, are posing upon the artistic practice. How to regain space of privacy, opacity, not being transparent, and in doing so, actually having your own space and having your own time, a time inside another time. So it would be, and this is just a hypothesis I'm sharing here with you, that it would be interesting to think about how not to be contemporary, how to be anachronic, and how artists are more and more dealing with this notion in order to find our own language again, and how this language perhaps is not standard, perhaps is not to be understood tomorrow. Perhaps we are just creating a space for possibility, for something that is going to happen and is going to be understandable many years later. So I think that the contemporary is really a consciousness about this question of how to be anachronic in a super positive way, how to be untimely and not to respond, so that the real dialogues that we have been talking about during the 90s do not happen in simultaneous times, but perhaps they happen among times which are anachronic, that they are not synchronized. So the question is, from the region I'm working in, from a place like Barcelona, which is very, very provincial and very, very well known and very visited because of tourism, or a place like Bilbao, or a country like Spain, how can we talk, how can we address these problems? How can we get delocalized, so to say? One possibility is to start being delocalized in language, as I said, to use another way of explaining and talking about ourselves. And that's why it comes to the question of the importance of fiction. I did a project called The Malady of Writing, where I've been collecting samples of writing, fictional writing done by artists, where they were trying to reinvent the vocabulary. So using fiction, using a tool which is made for fiction in order to address realities that are beyond or outside fiction. I've been then quoting a very interesting text by Mark Klimberg that has been published in the Fox, the magazine of art and language, in 1975. Klimberg said, could you imagine that we could address very important questions of Western modernism and then do so in a thriller that then would become a bestseller? Could you imagine a language which is not made for the purpose that you invented it and then just model it to another purpose? Can you be elastic enough? Can we be elastic enough? I mean, and this is a very important question in order to be delocalized, in order to escape even this notion of the region. So first we could escape it by language. Second, we could escape it by time. How can we actually stop to be nervous and be as anachronic as we want, as untimely as we want, as unfashionable as we would like to be? Why is that a problem and actually not a new space of possibility? And why I am actually addressing all that here? Because I think that we're facing a really interesting time, that we need to reset the machine, that we need to talk about very political questions, but instead of learning more about them, we should unlearn what we already know in order to start learning it differently and giving us a space of possibility for the future to appear, for the near future to appear, for new propositions to get discovered. So this notion of unlearning what we know is very important. During many years, every time that one opened a press release, we have been talking like for this and that. We have been talking about the importance of producing knowledge if you do exhibitions, the importance of that we are not doing anything which is superficial. We're producing knowledge. We're producing a discursive practice. So what if we accept that perhaps the most important task is not to produce knowledge, but actually to articulate it? What if nonsense, for example, is an exercise that we need to do, like we need to just get flexible and start being elastic and start stopping producing more sense and start producing nonsense, anachronism, fictional language, unlearning the political lessons we know, so that perhaps new proposals are possible, new language appear, new spaces for cultures so important for freedom, which is contemporary art and culture in general. Thank you very much.